I read 13 books in March. I read 13 books and I want to talk about them. I've taken notes, so hopefully that will help me be more organized in my thoughts. And then when I edit this, I won't want to light myself on fire. Here we go. First, I want to talk about, I didn't read this in March, but I want to talk about Dragonfly and Amber by Diana Gabaldon. It's the second Outlander book, and oh my God, this was the first book I've read this year that I really had to push through. I really enjoyed the first Outlander book. It was super fun, like a hot Scotsman, time travel, Scottish romance. Great. There were some elements of it that I was a little like, whatever, you know, like quite a bit of sexual violence. And I am a person, I'm very sensitive to what I watch. There's a lot of TV and movies I can't watch because seeing it, hearing it, sensory overload for me, and it's so overwhelming and it's so intense. So I can't watch, like I don't think I'll be able to watch the Outlander series on Starz, but I have recognized that I can read stuff that I would never watch because, I don't know, like my mind is creating the image. And so I can either fill in the gaps or kind of leave it more, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't affect me the same way. That being said, there is sexual violence in the series. It really becomes like a plot point, like a plot device. Oh no, this person was assaulted. This person was assaulted. And that becomes a thing that moves the story along. I read book 1, really enjoyed it, really liked the characters. And so then I was like, okay, I'll read book 2. Well, book 2, I know she did this to be like, but you start book 2 and it's a jump in time from when the first book left off. So you're way in the future and you're just like, what the hell? Okay, I guess. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty frustrating. And there's in the foreword of that second book, the author says a lot of people think that when they start reading it, oh no, this is the wrong book, I've made a mistake. And so she was just like messing with her audience. Where the first book took place in Scotland, a lot of the second book takes place in French court because the political plot line in the series is about the like Jacobite uprisings. This like prince basically trying to claim Scotland or like become the king of England or something like it's something like that. Anyway, so most of the book is political in the French courts and it was not super interesting to me. I just couldn't get into it. The antagonist from the first book, who is like the worst human and you hate him, he's like a horrible person. All throughout the book you're like, oh, is he back? No, he's dead. No, is he? He won't die. He won't go away. It's so frustrating. I was pushing so hard through the book. And then I got to the last 100 pages and I was like, okay, finally, thank you. And like things were moving along and it was progressing. And so now the second book has set it up to where, okay, I can see how we're gonna like move forward in the series. It was so frustrating, but I'm glad that I pushed through. And book number 3 is in the mail now. So I gave it 2 stars because I hated it so much until the last 100 pages and I was back into it. So then after that, I read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. Beautiful book, beautiful cover, beautiful writing. It basically follows the story of a set of twins. Basically, when those twins grow up, one of them goes off and lives her life passing as a white woman, and the other continues to live her life as a black woman. And so you kind of are following these two paths and these two different sisters' storylines, and then it's also multi-generational. Gorgeous writing, discusses racism, colorism, there's queer representation. There's this one quote on grief that as I was getting toward the end of the book, there is just some beautiful writing in there. And I can't wait to read more Britt Bennett. I actually added to my book of the month box this month her other book, The Mothers. Really excited for that. After that, I read The Song of Achilles. Now this was absolutely a book that BookTube made me read. It's by Madeline Miller. It's a retelling of the story of Achilles in Greek mythology. So there's overlap with the Iliad and the Odyssey and like all of those stories, but it's through the perspective of his companion Patroclus. Beautiful. I gave The Vanishing Half 5 out of 5 stars, and I gave Song of Achilles 5 out of 5 stars. Such a fresh and interesting retelling of a story that I wasn't altogether familiar with in the beginning, but I loved it. And it's once you get into the flow of her writing and the like ambiance, I just like burned through it and it was so good. I really recommended it. And then I made my husband read it. Beautiful love story. So like the Trojan War, and then there are gods, and discusses fate and destiny, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I did a online phone order to pick up from my local indie bookstore her other book, Cersei. Now, I think on Goodreads, I gave Cersei 4 stars. Upon reflection, sitting with it a little bit, I think it's probably more of like a 3-star for me. Again, I still love like Madeline Miller's writing, and it was this transporting to like ancient Greece that was like really fun. So Achilles, his story is that he's like a half god and he's supposed to be the most like powerful warrior ever, and he's gonna play a role like in the Trojan War, and so then you're kind of following that. And so Cersei, which probably should be a story I'm more familiar with because I'm pretty sure we read the Odyssey in high school. She is a god or is a half god. She's a witch. And she gets banished, exiled to this island. So the whole story is that she's like exiled on this island for like ever. So it just takes place in one location, which I think makes it hard for it to be as compelling of a story maybe. And I think the impression I got and that the discourse around the book is that it's like this like great feminist book, which I can kind of see, and Read with Cindy said something about this, but it's not, there is like vindication against male aggressors, but there's not a whole lot of connection with other female characters. So basically it just follows Cersei as she's stuck on this island and all the people that come and go. It was fine, just didn't love it. I certainly didn't love it as much as I love Song of Achilles. So then the next book was like highly anticipated. I was really prepared to love this book. I was like, this is going to be one of my favorite books. It has a ton of hype around it, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book has such an interesting premise, such an interesting outline. It basically follows Addie LaRue, who is living like a provincial French life, is about to be forced into a marriage, basically strikes a deal with the devil that she wants to live forever because there's so much life she wants to live. So she strikes a deal with the devil and he's like, okay, you can live forever. But the catch is that everyone she meets forgets her. As soon as she walks away or is out of their sight, she's immediately forgotten, which is interesting. And so you think, wow, there's a lot you could do with that story. It really, I don't know. The writing was so beautiful. It's got like really beautiful, like poetic writing. There's like a love triangle kind of situation in it that's like sort of interesting. And then in the story, she meets somebody that doesn't forget her. And so then you're like, what's going on? It really ends up being, and I saw this in a review on Goodreads, and it sounds like very severe, but the term like navel gazing feels appropriate because this person who could go on so many adventures and like do so many things and like use this to the advantage of others, like the whole book is just her being like, no one remembers me, but I have to live. I can't let the devil win. So I ended up giving it like a 3-star. It might be like, it's probably more like a 3.5. I wanted to love it because so many people love this book and there's so much like hype around it. I kind of wanted it to be more like thrilling and more of like an adventure, and it wasn't. It like took place in like Paris, England, New York. It was just okay. So then after that, I tried to read The Mists of Avalon and I hated it. And I DNF'd that son of a bitch. I was just so bored. I was trying to push through. It's a story, kind of a retelling of like the Knights of the Round Table, like of King Arthur's court, but through like the female characters. And I might have gotten like 100 pages in or more. And then I realized that like the main story was like a love story between like 2 half siblings. And I said, I'm not gonna read 800 pages of this shit. Like, I'm not gonna read 800 pages of incestual yearning. So we DNF that, and I'm never gonna read it. But to cleanse my palate after that, I read for the second time this year, The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. A steamy romance. Let's talk tropes for a second. The enemies to lovers trope. I love it. I love like the 2 people that hate each other and then they fall in love and they find out, oh wait, you're not a bad person and I actually love you. It's so, I just love it. I read a ton of romance. It's so fun. It's such a palate cleanse. There is like so little pressure on the romance genre for me, but it has such a service of comfort or like excitement and the thrill. It's like the same thing with like rom-com movies. Like I love rom-com movies. I'm not expecting it to be like the best movie I've ever watched. These books are rom-coms and they are so fun. So after The Hating Game, I got each of the Brown Sisters books by by Talia Hibbert. So the first, and I read them in order that they were written and published. So the first one is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. It's my favorite one of the three. Chloe Brown has like a chronic illness, chronic pain, and it kind of keeps her shut away in her life. She has a near-death experience and decides she needs to get a life and comes up with a list of things to do so she feels like she has more of a life. This is another enemies to lovers romance. Her love interest is her superintendent at her apartment, Red. Love him. I love a redhead, as you know, and it's just so fun, really steamy, really funny. I think I gave it 4 out of 5. Okay, so then after Chloe Brown is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. Dani is a professor. She's all about her career. She's super uptight, and she just wants like friends with benefits. Like she doesn't want a serious relationship, and she doesn't think she's capable of like love in a serious relationship. She's buddies with the security guard Zafir, and they get into kind of a fake dating relationship through like some mishaps. Very sexy, very fun. Zafir is like such a sweetheart. Loved the like Pakistani representation. Also cool like anxiety representation for him. Dani is bi. So Talia Hibbert just does really, really cool, sincere representation. And I really appreciate that she has content warnings at the beginning of all of her books. What I also forgot to mention, in Get a Life, Chloe Brown, there's a point where Red recognizes and introspects in himself, you know what, this situation I'm in is bringing up a lot of gunk basically, and I need to go to therapy. And so the hero in this rom-com starts going to therapy, and I was like, I love that. So in these books that Talia Hibbert writes, it is obviously like they all have happy endings, but they also feel very representative and very truthful and authentic and not toxic or like fluffy. Everybody has genuine roadblocks to a healthy relationship. Everybody has stuff that they're working through, and I loved it. So loved Chloe Brown. I'm kind of all over the place with these. Dani Brown was great. Didn't love her as much as Chloe Brown. The books. And then the newest one that just came out last month, the third of the Brown Sister series, is Act Your Age, Eve Brown. I had a harder time connecting with Eve. Her whole thing at the beginning, she's kind of a hot mess. She's kind of irresponsible, and then happens upon this job at a B&B. I had a hard time connecting with her. She was a little frustrating for me. Eventually I did really get into it, and it's very, very sexy, and it was just really fun. I love Talia Hibbert's. I mean, I love them. I'll read all 3 of these again, no doubt, and I'm excited to read what else Talia Hibbert does. Okay, so then I've also been trying to get into audiobooks. I recognize that they are a little bit harder for me because I can zone out pretty easily. It does require more focus and attention from me. I started a new stained glass project. I wanted to make a little stained glass Hobbit door, like the bag end door from the movies. And I thought, okay, well, how fun if I listened to the audiobook while I did it. The thing about the Lord of the Rings, like the books, I truly don't know if I would love the books and the stories as much if I didn't have such a dearness in my heart for the movies. The first movie came out when I was in elementary school, grew up with them. My family loves them. My husband's family loves them. Like, they're so dear to us. To me, I'm gonna like the books because the books take me to that world. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm not gonna give it less than 4 stars. Yeah. I did also finish The Rhythm of Prayer. It was great for like my mornings when I just kind of like to have me time, quiet time, and read or reflect or pray. I would just read a couple pages every morning. The one that sticks out to me that I remember the most is Nish Wyseth did a prayer about political engagement and loving your neighbor. She said that politics are the most like practical way that we can practice loving our neighbor. That was great. I will read it again, and it'll be something that I just kind of continue to chew on and learn from in different seasons of my life. Okay. This next book is my favorite book that I've read this year. It's so special to me. Halfway through, I was like, oh my God, this might be one of my new favorite books. And then when I finished it, I was like, okay, 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. It's going to become a comfort read for me. I'm going to read this again. I need to almost like immediately read it again so I can annotate and really soak in the story. And that is House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Oh my God, so sweet, so sweet, so whimsical. It takes place in a world like ours, but there are magical creatures. All magical creatures are supposed to be registered. It's kind of a separate but equal sort of regime that they're under. And the main character, Linus, he's basically a caseworker for these children's homes that magical youth live in. They're orphanages. He is given this like top secret task to go visit this mysterious children's home on this island. Once he gets there, he finds out there are like really special magical kids that live here. Some are really scary and have like power to like destroy the world. It just grows into this really beautiful like found family story with a really sweet love story. And it's just funny and so full of heart and full of whimsy and tenderness. And oh my God, it just like filled my heart up. It's got like fantasy elements. It's just so, I love it. I love it, and I can't wait to read it again. And it is my favorite book of the year so far. So then after that, another book that BookTube made me buy, and this I blame specifically on Read with Cindy, but I read Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is like it's a fantasy. I was not aware that it was YA, but a couple pages in, it was like clear to me that it was targeted for a younger audience because somebody said like crap. And I was like, oh, this is different than the books that I have read earlier this year. It is a heist. It takes place in this world where there is a group of people called the Grisha who basically have powers and are different categories. It's a heist. It follows 6 individuals. Each chapter is a different POV. It was so fun. It was such a ride. I immediately ordered the second book as soon as I was done. It's part of a duology. And I really think I want to read the rest of Leigh Bardugo's work, especially now that Netflix is making a series off of her Shadow and Bone trilogy. It was just so fun. And because it's YA, it's like the romance is so sweet, and like in comparison to the other romances I read, it was just like so mild and like yearny, and like literally the sentence would just be like, he looked at her, you know, or something like that. But then you get on the internet and they're like, oh my God, they're the perfect couple, and it's like they didn't touch, like they didn't. So it's so fun. So I guess Leigh Bardugo is going to be my foray into YA, young adult. I'm not mad about it because that book was a hoot. It was so fun. And so then the last book that I read, finished it last night, March 31st, was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I mean, you want to talk about the blueprint for enemies to lovers. It's just, this is another one where it's like, I've known the story for so long, and I was in middle school when the Keira Knightley version came out. I love that movie. It's like it is a comfort movie for me. Like that movie is like a weighted blanket. I feel so good when I watch it. I love it. The music, the like cinematography, and I kind of tag teamed. I read the book, but then also listened to the audiobook. I kind of alternated. And Audible has an original reading of this book by Rosamund Pike, who plays Jane in the 2008-2009 version. It's just... It's so good. It's one of my favorite romances. It truly, if I was on a desert island and I could only take one romance with me, it would be Pride and Prejudice. I just love it. And I got the really beautiful Penguin cloth-bound classics version. It makes my heart happy. So I would really recommend the audiobook if you like audiobooks. Yeah, so that was what I did. That was what I did this March. I worked and I read, and that was pretty much it. And I made a stained glass project. Yeah. So if you read anything, why don't you let me know? If you have any recommendations, please let me know. And yeah, thanks for letting me talk about books. I'm so glad that I'm reading again. I can't even tell you. I have a great life, but reading has just like enhanced it so much. And I just feel really lucky that I got back into reading. And I'm just a happy little camper. So anyway, I'll see you when I make the next one.